I am 73 years old. Last November, the pilot light on our basement furnace went out during a cold snap. I grabbed a heavy metal flashlight from the kitchen drawer and started down the wooden stairs. On the third step down, my left knee just gave way. It was not a slip. I did not miss the tread. The muscle in my thigh simply failed to hold my weight. I caught myself hard on the wooden handrail, wrenching my shoulder, and just stood there in the dark stairwell, breathing heavy. I could feel the muscle trembling under my jeans. I had to turn sideways and carefully step down 1 foot at a time, like a toddler learning to walk. When I finally got to the concrete floor, I shined the flashlight down at my own legs and wondered when they had gotten so thin. I spent 30 years walking the concrete floors of a distribution warehouse in East Tennessee. I climbed metal ladders, I moved heavy freight, and I spent 12 hours a day on my feet without ever thinking about my balance. When you live that kind of life, you just assume your legs are built out of iron. You think the strength is permanent. You retire, you sit down a little more often, and you try to ignore the fact that the stairs are getting harder. I stood in that cold basement and realized I had been lying to myself. My legs were not just tired, they were shrinking. The machinery was breaking down and I was letting it happen. My daughter Megan came over a few days later. She is an occupational therapist and she spends her entire week working with older folks who have lost their mobility. I made the mistake of telling her about my knee giving out on the basement stairs. She did not give me sympathy. She sat me down at the kitchen table and told me about a medical paper she had been reading. It tracked men in their late 60s and 70s, and it showed that we can lose a massive amount of our functional leg strength in just a few years if we do not actively fight the process. She told me that over 68% of seniors are unknowingly destroying their own muscle tissue at the breakfast table. They wake up, they eat what they think is a healthy morning meal, and they literally starve the muscle right off their bones. I spent the next 2 months paying attention to everything I put on my plate. I treated my own body like an engine that was misfiring, and I needed to find the bad fuel. I realized that my morning routine was actively stripping the strength out of my legs. I narrowed the problem down to 4 specific things. 3 of them were massive mistakes I was making every single morning because I believed the lies we are told about eating healthy as we get older. The 4th thing was the one specific food I finally started eating every morning that stopped the weakness and put the heavy armor back on my legs. I am going to tell you exactly what all 4 of these things are. We have to talk about the mistakes first because you cannot build a strong foundation if you are still pouring bad concrete. The first mistake I had to completely abandon was eating high-fiber bran cereals. For years, I started my day with a big bowl of dry flakes and skim milk. I saw the commercials on television. I read the boxes. I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was helping my digestion and protecting my heart. What I was actually doing was filling my stomach with empty cardboard that offered absolutely zero building blocks for my muscles. When you wake up in the morning, your body has been fasting all night. It needs raw materials to repair the damage in your legs. If you give it a bowl of processed carbohydrates and fiber, your blood sugar spikes, but your muscles get absolutely nothing. Because the body still needs protein to function, it starts pulling it from your own tissue. I was forcing my body to eat my own thighs just to get through the morning. Megan showed me a clinical study that looked at older adults eating carbohydrate-heavy cereals versus dense protein in the morning. The cereal group lost their lean muscle mass at an alarming rate over a 3-year period. Their bodies were constantly breaking down muscle tissue for energy. It made me think of my old neighbor David. David is 74. He was obsessed with his cholesterol and ate nothing but plain bran flakes every morning for a decade. Last spring, he tripped over a garden hose in his driveway. It was a minor trip, but he could not catch himself because his legs had no mass left. He broke his hip and has been using a walker ever since. His healthy cereal cost him his freedom. I threw all the boxes in my pantry straight into the garbage. The second mistake was falling into the fruit and juice trap. Linda means well, she really does. She watches the morning health programs, and she started buying bags of fresh oranges, bananas, and berries. She would make us these big fruit plates for breakfast. I went along with it. I figured fruit was natural, so it had to be good for an aging body. I was dead wrong. An older body does not process a massive dump of fructose the way a young body does. When you eat a plate of fruit on an empty stomach, you are flooding your system with sugar. The body burns through it in an hour, and then you crash. Worse than that, fruit contains no amino acids. There is no structural material to rebuild the muscle fibers that wear down when we walk, climb stairs, or carry groceries. I was putting cheap gas in the tank, but I had no tools to actually fix the engine. I read a paper from a university that tracked men over 65 who replaced traditional breakfasts with fruit-only meals. The men experienced a rapid decline in lower body strength. Their muscles simply did not have the raw materials to maintain their size. My friend Michael from the diner fell into this exact trap. He wanted to lose his gut, so he started eating nothing but 2 bananas and a glass of juice every morning. He lost weight, but his legs got so thin his pants looked like empty sails. Last summer, he asked me to help him carry a bag of dog food from his trunk because his grip and his leg drive were completely gone. He traded his physical capability for a lower number on the scale. I told Linda to stop making the fruit plates. The third mistake was relying on processed, low-fat breakfast meats. I used to think I needed to avoid real meat in the morning, so I started buying thin, low-fat turkey bacon and highly processed deli ham. I thought I was getting my protein without the guilt. I thought I was outsmarting my own aging process. What nobody tells you is that an older body is stubborn. It requires heavy, complete protein sources paired with natural fats to actually trigger muscle growth. Those thin, highly processed meats are stripped of the natural fats and cholesterol that an older man's body desperately needs to produce the hormones that maintain physical strength. The protein in those packages is weak. When you eat it, the body barely registers it. You are eating food, but the construction site inside your legs remains completely shut down. I found a research trial that compared older men consuming heavily processed, low-fat meats versus thick, dense, whole animal proteins. The men eating the processed meats continued to lose strength in their lower body. Their muscles did not respond to the weak signal. The men eating the heavy, whole proteins actually triggered new muscle growth. I realized I was chewing on rubber and expecting my body to turn it into steel. A guy I know from church named John used to brag about his low-fat diet. He ate nothing but those thin turkey slices. Last winter, his legs simply gave out while he was walking down the aisle to his pew. The muscle had nothing left in the tank to hold him up. I stopped buying the processed meat that same afternoon. Taking away the bad habits stopped the damage, but I still needed to fix the weakness. I had stopped poisoning the environment, but my legs still felt hollow when I walked up the driveway. I needed to figure out what my body was actually begging for when I woke up. I needed a specific material that could rebuild the foundation. That is when I found the fourth thing on this list, the single food that changed everything for me. I started eating a heavy bowl of full-fat, large-curd cottage cheese every single morning. I did not buy the low-fat version with the artificial thickeners. I went looking for the real heavy dairy. I realized that my older body needed a very specific type of fuel to rebuild muscle, and full-fat cottage cheese is packed with a unique protein called casein. Casein is not like other proteins. When it hits your stomach, it forms a thick gel. It digests incredibly slowly. Instead of rushing through your system, it acts like an intravenous drip, feeding your leg muscles a steady, continuous stream of amino acids for up to 7 hours. I was giving my legs a permanent supply of wet concrete to patch the cracks and rebuild the wall all morning long. On top of that, the heavy fat content provided the exact environment my body needed to actually absorb the nutrients and produce the hormones required to keep an old man strong. I read a study that looked specifically at older men consuming heavy casein protein from full-fat dairy first thing in the morning. The results were undeniable. Their bodies completely stopped breaking down muscle tissue and began aggressively repairing the fibers in their lower legs and thighs. The slow-drip amino acids forced their stubborn muscles to respond. They were feeding their bodies the exact raw materials needed to reinforce the foundation. I was absolutely floored. I had been eating dry cereal for years when I could have been giving my legs exactly what they needed to survive. I did not wait around. The very next morning, I put a heavy scoop of that large curd cottage cheese into a bowl. I sprinkled a little black pepper on it and ate it with my coffee. I did it the next day and the day after that. The change was not magic. Muscle does not return in a week. But about 6 weeks after I threw away the cereal and started eating the heavy dairy, I had to go back down into the basement to get a box of tools for Derek. I grabbed the flashlight. I walked to the top of the wooden stairs. I put my foot on the first tread and stepped down. I did not hold the handrail in a death grip. I just walked down the stairs. My thighs simply fired, the muscle tightened, and my legs held my weight without a single tremble. I got to the concrete floor, turned around, and looked back up the stairs. The hollow feeling was completely gone. The strength was back. The armor was holding. When you get to be my age, you realize that if your legs go, your freedom goes right out the door with them. Muscle does not just vanish because the calendar turns over. It goes when you stop giving it a reason to stay, and it goes when you starve it of the one specific fuel it needs to survive. You do not have to watch your world shrink. You do not have to accept that getting down a flight of stairs is going to be a terrifying experience for the rest of your life. You just have to be willing to look at your breakfast plate and make a hard change. I'm going to head out to the driveway now. Derek is bringing his truck over, and we have some heavy lumber to move for a project in the backyard. My legs are going to carry that weight, and they are going to hold me steady while I work. Take care of your body, feed it the heavy materials it actually needs, and do not let anyone tell you that weakness is just part of the deal. I will be right here if you want to talk again.